Yo, what's going on, fellas? Thanks for tuning in for another special episode of Second Guessing with Stressan. I had to do an impromptu one. I just watched that Nick Caley press conference, and man, I loved it. I figured I would kind of go through some of the clips with you guys, dissect, things that I took away that I like. But just overall, I mean, I know you can't read too much into press conferences, but that's something I like to do, and I think a lot of y'all like to do as well. But I feel like you can take away a lot from that. I mean, there's a lot to look into, but I definitely don't think you could have watched that press conference and then feel negative about Nick Caley and what he will bring to this offense. And I really liked, things that he brought up. First off, shout out Mr. Optimistic says we in here. Shout out to RK Shiza says let's go stressing. Yeah, so I don't know if y'all had the chance to tune in like I did. I'm sure some of y'all did here, but man, it was awesome. You know, the main things that we were all concerned about was adaptability. That was probably the big reason why Bobby Slowick got fired was he did not adapt to his personnel, and you could see that that was addressed by not only Nick Caley but by D'Amico. I love D'Amico's answers when he was asked, about the firing and the search process and basically how it was different this time around. Like basically, he learned as a young head coach, what to look for specifically. And I think it's the same stuff that we took away as fans, and it's stuff that we've said on this stream time and time again. But and even some of the same verbiage that I've been using and we've been using was used by D'Amico and Nick Caley. But the one thing is, the overarching thing is adaptability and being able to adjust. Those words were used often, and the phrase that we've used on here, which is, when Slowick ran that offense, it seemed more often than not like he was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And that's what Nick Caley said when he said, how he plans to run an offense. He basically said, I'm going to plan my offense around my personnel and not the other way around, which is what Bobby did. And that may not be his fault being a young coach. And that's a point that D'Amico brought up several times when talking about Nick Caley is that he's been in multiple different types of schemes. So he knows more than just one thing. Whereas on the flip side, when you hired Bobby Slowick, the only thing he knew was Shanahan's scheme. So as much flack that I and we have given him for him not adapting last year, it may have been beyond his control because he may have not known enough how to do it. So that was something that was highlighted. But yeah, so basically it boils down to rather than you having this scheme and the players have to fit it, and then you have to hope that they fit it. And in our situation, most of our players were drafted before Bobby came on offense, aside from CJ and, some receivers. But as far as like the bones of it, like your O line, they were all pretty much established. And most of those guys were gap scheme guys as opposed to zone scheme guys. So it kind of sucked for him in that sense that you basically got this scheme and then you had this personnel. So maybe you can kind of blame D'Amico for hiring Bobby Slowick in the first place. You could give him a pass from the sense that D'Amico's a young coach and had a limited network and had a small pool to pull from, and it's basically a learning experience. But that being said, Bobby still did pretty good, all things considered. I mean, obviously this year was worse, but first year, I mean, we've won a playoff game for 2 years in a row. So, but I'd love the interview. Like everything I heard from D'Amico, everything I heard from Nick Caley is exactly what I want to hear. Brandon Hallman says, step one, he didn't wear a hat. Hey, I'm with it, I think we're good. And then Wow Spartacus says, we got McVay's twin. Yeah, man, you can't help but notice as soon as the guy talks, it's just he sounds exactly like Sean McVay. And I joked, I know, we're all trying to project which type of offense we will run based off this hire. And a lot of us have assumed that it'll be more so like the McVay variant of the Shanahan scheme, just based off of recency. That's where he's been the last 2 years. But the fact that he sounds like Sean McVay, maybe he'll coach like Sean McVay. I take that as a good thing. Uh, Over on TikTok Live, we got Clay Quinney says, I'm really looking forward to this OC. I am too, man. I'm super excited about it. It's something great. So I'm gonna go ahead and just share some clips, and then we can kind of dive into some analysis on that. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Let's see. I don't know if it'll allow me to do it. Open system settings. I got to do something on my system settings. Okay, there we go. I got a new laptop, and so I'm having to do a setting here. Just bear with me. Allow. Okay, Google Chrome may not be able to record contents of your screen until it is quit. Wow, that's crazy. Well, I was going to live stream the clips from my computer here, but it's a new laptop and it looks like I have to close out the browser to do it. So I guess I won't be able to do that. We can just talk about it and continue to go from there. Let me see if I can get Google Chrome back open. Let's see. There we go. Let's deny it. Okay. All right. Yeah, whatever. I mean, y'all see him on my timeline. I mean, a lot of the clips that I had, you know, I'll just go with this comment right here from Mr. Optimistic. He says, contagious energy, game plan, offense, great coaching, lineage, etc. Yeah, I mean, we had talked about the two things that we were worried about, which was one, experience, and then two, scheme. I think both of those have been, kind of calmed down as far as how concerned we should be. D'Amico was asked that, and he basically said it's not. He basically rebutted the question of how do you feel about the inexperience. He said, everybody has to start somewhere. He said, I myself was a first-time play caller as a D coordinator too, and he said it's more so about the person as opposed to the actual scheme. So again, he alluded to the multiple schemes so that he has different offenses to lean on. And it basically goes to show that he felt comfortable in talking with him that he will be able to do what he needs him to do. So very excited about it. He spoke glowingly of CJ Stroud multiple times. I'm sure he is very excited to see what he can do himself with a quarterback of that caliber. He was asked about his tight end background. That was a point brought up by D'Amico as well as a reason why they like the hire is, coming from that tight end background, he's familiar in both the run and the pass game. And there was a funny clip too where basically he was saying, I love tight ends. And so that kind of gets you excited. If you couple the fact that he likes tight ends and then he talks about how he will put players in their best position to succeed based off of their skill sets, you kind of have some hope with these tight ends. Brevin Jordan coming back, maybe even Dalton Schultz finds a way to better use them. Like Dalton Schultz, like maybe he realizes like, hey, Dalton Schultz, you're essentially like you're like a big slot receiver almost. So I'm not going to put you in these positions and ask you to block these, all pro defensive ends and stuff like that. So shout out Mario. I like tight ends. Nick Caley. Yep, he does like tight ends. Retreat to Hell says controlling the line of scrimmage, communication, adjustments to player strengths. I love it. Yeah, and so the first thing he talked about, I mean, I know it's a lot of like coach speak, but it was fundamentals. I mean, that sounds cheesy and corny, but a lot of the struggles that we saw, it seemed like fundamentals were not being coached that well, especially on the O-line. So on the O-line and pass protection front, that's probably the thing I'm most excited about. And I had posted a video a day or two ago of the Barstool guys with Gruden and Portnoy and Big Cat, and Matt Patricia was on there. And they were talking about the Patriots and offensive line. And John Gruden said, the most important hire a head coach makes is the offensive line coach, because it all starts in the trenches. And if your offensive line coach isn't shit, then you aren't shit. And they went on to say, yeah, you look at the Eagles O-line coach, he's the best in the business. And then they said the next best guy is the Chiefs O-line coach. So it was no coincidence those teams were meeting. But they went on to say that the O-line coach for the Patriots during their dynasty was Dante Scarnecchia, who, he was very critical to their success. He even retired one year, and they did so bad without him that they begged him to come back. And the very first year he comes back, they won a Super Bowl. So that just shows you the importance of Dante Scarnecchia and the importance of a good O-line coach. So Nick Caley also, when asked today, he was asked like, mentors or people in the run game or pass pro that he would lean on or use for experience. And he specifically mentioned Dante Scarnecchia by name multiple times. So I pointed that out the other day when I posted that Barstool video, that not only is Nick Caley tied to him, but also Shaplinski and also the new O-line coach, Cole Popovich. And, D'Amico talked about Cole Popovich. He talked about how all the players loved him. He talked about how Nick Caley had a relationship with him in New England, how those are both factors. So that was good to see. I'm super optimistic about Cole Popovich. I'm super optimistic about the pass protection going forward, just the rules being different. Nick Caley has a more diverse background than just the simple slide zone protection scheme that the Shanahan guys run, like Bobby Slowick did. And then personnel too, like it kind of goes hand in hand with the run game. If he sees that, the offensive line is better at gap running, that kind of translates to man-on-man blocking. And also if just the run game improves, you're now in more favorable situations where you're not having to go for these 3rd and longs and defenses can pin their ears back. Yeah. And the other thing too, that he said, that's something that I've been saying a lot, is he said, we need to block inside out, not outside in. I mean, all year you watched our pass protection struggles. It just seemed like all we always did was block from outside in, meaning how many times would you see Daria Gumbawale being responsible for blocking the middle of the defense? And we would have our guards and centers go out wide. And now you got a 300+ pound nose tackle being blocked by a running back or a untouched blitzer. So he understands, and that's where we struggled, was the interior, and not only in just the scheme where we just let things come through the middle, but also the skill set. Like the center, Patterson had a great year. I mean, not a great year, but I mean, he wasn't as bad as we may think. But like guards and centers, our interior O-line was the weakness of our entire team. So the fact that he says it starts from inside out, like just that alone also makes me feel great about it. So Mr. Optimistic says, retreat, we need to rebrand your name. He says, LMAO. No, I love it. RK Shizzo says, I believe Brevin Jordan will be back. He says, yep, he will, man. I'm excited to watch him. Brandon says, we have O-line PTSD, but didn't Canserio help draft Joe Tooney and Nate Solder? I don't know for sure, but if he did, that makes me feel better. Product of the H on TikTok says, I'm liking this energy. I'm going to be infectious for this team. Yeah, man, I like it too, man. I'm feeling good right now. And then Kev Manbro on TikTok says, so no more Dalton Schultz blocking. I hope, man. I mean, if Caley does what he says, which I believe he will do, is put players in their best position to succeed based off of their skill sets, he's going to look at Dalton Schultz and say, okay, you suck at this, you're good at this, so you're going to do what you're good at. I mean, it's imperfect. Sometimes they'll be put in certain positions, but you can still take measures yourself as the play caller to control where you put guys at. So it's not, just end all be all. So that part of it is very encouraging. Man, I really wish, let me try it again to see if I can share my screen. I'll keep talking for a second. Hey, it's working. Let's go. Okay. Yeah, let me share some clips, man. And then I kind of already covered all these, just rambling off in my head because I'm a psycho, but let's see. So let's just start with right here.
It's going to be based on the shorts. It's a great opportunity, great people in this organization, and, really looking forward to it's a great opportunity, great people in this organization, and, really looking forward to working, obviously, with CJ. Tremendous talent, competitor, you talk about an ultimate competitor, tough, instinctive, can make plays. So I'm very excited. And as a, first-time coordinator, to answer your second part of the question, really excited to get an opportunity to evolve this scheme and put, it's not going to be my spin, it's going to be what's best for our players. And it's always going to be what's best for our players. No, we're not pounding a square peg into a round hole. It's going to be based on the strengths of our quarterback, the players, and the guys on this team. So that's what it will always be, designed around. It's a great opportunity, great people in this organization, and, really looking forward to working, obviously.
He basically, that was like his opening or that wasn't his opening statement. That was, go to my tweet here. So that was basically Nick Caley. He talked about CJ Stroud, how good of a talent he is and an ultimate competitor. But, the big thing was what I addressed already was that, he said that you can't fit a square peg into a round hole. So let me see if I can get this screen. Let me get the, there we go. That'll work like that. Let's do like that. Yeah. So basically he's saying that he's going to adjust his scheme around his personnel and not vice versa. So that's all we ask, man. That's all we ask. Like, you can't it's like, you can't have this old school mindset. But let's see here. Brandon says, good news. Nick Caley has a year of tape on how not to use our guys and what they are bad at. Yeah, correct. And that is, part of the argument of retaining the guys on staff that we did is they were there. So they know what went wrong and they're also familiar with everything. But I guess, Slowick did pretty good his first year and the tape was out on him the second year. So now there's no quote unquote tape on Caley. So we had that advantage, but yeah, we'll keep it moving and watch a couple more clips. I can pull up the actual live too as well. Let's see. Here is the
back.
Pro that
obviously, the halfback. You got to be able to see the game through the
to the next level.
Yeah, well, with the offensive line, the quarterback, obviously the halfback, you got to be able to see the game through the same set of eyes, and you got to be going in the same direction, and you got to be tied together. And it starts with communication, and it starts with protecting inside out and establishing the pocket, the depth of the pocket, the width of the pocket. And that extends, obviously, into the tight ends, receivers, when you're chipping and stuff like that. But it does. It really starts inside out, and it starts seeing it through the same lens. And we all got to be coordinated in that.
If I could follow this real quick, is there any coach who's influenced your views of the offensive line?
Sure.
The experience that you have with that?
Yeah, Dante Scarnecchia. I was with Dave DeGuglielmo in 2015. Very good coach. Dante Scarnecchia, longtime New England coach, influenced a lot of what I've obviously learned up front in the protection systems, and then been a part of other ways of doing it too. But yeah, in terms of my the formative stages, it would be my early years in New England, obviously, with those two.
Dante Scarnecchia, baby. He's probably the greatest O-line coach of all time. And we have Nick Caley, who's been under his tutelage, and Cole Popovich, and Nick Caserio. So I'm confident we can fix the pass protection. But just on that clip there, obviously the Scarnecchia piece is big. The blocking inside out piece, which we talked about, is big. But also when he talks about seeing the game through the same set of eyes, running backs, quarterbacks, O-line, tight end, that tells me that it kind of alludes to the quarterback will now be involved in the pass pro. Whereas before with the Bobby Slowick offense and the Shanahan scheme, my understanding was the irony is they try and make things easier for the quarterback by not allowing them to set protections, but in turn can actually make it more difficult for them. So basically it sounds like CJ Stroud will be able to either one, set the initial protection, or two, at least be able to recheck it, which is what Matthew Stafford was able to do. And it helps if you're the quarterback who's potentially getting rushed, if you know what the exact assignments are. So now you can know where to and where not to look for potential threats. So that's great to hear as well. We'll just keep it moving and play a couple more. Let's see what we got. Here's D'Amico on Bobby Slowick.
Oh, Bobby's a great friend of mine. When I got into coaching, Bobby it was very hard to let Bobby go. Bobby's a really close friend, as you all know. Bobby's a great friend of mine. When I got into coaching, Bobby was the guy who helped me figure it all out. And we were QCs together there in San Fran. So really long relationship there with him. Nothing but love and admiration for Bobby and what he's done. I know he'll be a really good coach in this league as he continues to press forward in his career, and I wish him nothing but the best. It was very hard.
So that can't be. I guess it's not stated enough. I feel like a lot of people felt like the decision to fire Bobby Slowick was this easy, no-brainer decision, and I don't think it was. I was very shocked that he did fire him. For the reasons he mentioned. He admits it. Like, I'm really close to Bobby Slowick. Like, he's like the guy who basically helped me get started essentially in San Francisco. And they basically started their careers together. So as long as he's been in the NFL, he's been around Bobby Slowick. And that stuff matters. I mean, you spend time with people, you get close to them. So, that element, and then also the element too, like, yes, the offense was bad this year, but like overall, you could have made the argument that it was better last year. We had injuries, they made adjustments. you could have made arguments to keep Bobby Slowick. And so it wasn't an easy decision by any means. So basically my takeaway from this is this to me shows how serious DeMeco Ryans is about winning. And that's like probably like, I love that we got Nick Caley out of it, but I love that it also portrays or shows us, where DeMeco Ryans stands. And he talked about it too, like after the game, the loss to Kansas City, like he's aware of this franchise and our history and how we've never made it to the AFC Championship. And he's exactly spelled out saying, we're trying to get somewhere that we've never been. Like I could very easily be complacent with winning one playoff game and making it to the divisional round. But the fact that he went and fired Bobby Slowick shows that he's serious about taking that next step. And so as a Texans fan, this makes me feel really good. So kudos to him. And then, and for Bobby too, he just got that new gig in Miami. Wish him the best. I really do think it's just a situation to where he got put in with a team that didn't have the personnel he needed. And then he just didn't have enough experience in the sense of only knowing one scheme to have answers to evolve on that. So shout out Clay Quinney on YouTube. He says, love the use of the clip. I'll take that as the audio is working. It's my first time doing it, so that's good to hear. And then Fabian says, are they going to re-sign Diggs? Yeah, so on that, I had a show last night with Jonathan Alexander from the Chronicle. And before, I had wrote an article based off of what Texans Cap had said, basically about the situation where, we have until February 17th to try and rework a deal with Stefon Diggs, or otherwise we're saddled with, approximately $17 million in dead cap. And so, it makes sense for the Texans to try and re-sign him. And I've kind of automatically assumed that just because we want to re-sign him to avoid a dead cap hit, that he would also be willing to do so. But Jonathan brought up a good point in that Diggs, he doesn't owe it to us to make this decision by then. So, if we come in with an offer before this date, and basically we would be able to work a deal with him, and that would allow us to rework the $17 million dead cap owed this year and, spread it out to later years. And in Texans Cap's, projected offers, it would actually save us money in the cap this year, almost $9 million. It would go from like 17 to 8 or 9. But, it makes perfect sense for us. But if you look at it through Stefon Diggs's lens, he wants to go test the open market. Like, why would he just sign a deal with us without any other offers, unless we offer some crazy deal like 15 million or 14 million, but then now we're kind of overpaying. So with that logic, Diggs, he basically gives away all of his leverage if he just signs with us and doesn't go to the market. And then so you assume that he does, but then now once that date passes, the 17th, that dead cap of 17 million is stuck with us no matter what. So now, yes, we can re-sign him, but now when you re-sign him, you're going to be owing he's already been paid the cash wise, but on your cap, you're going to owe 17 million. And then now you re-sign him, and whatever your new contract is for that year could be another 5, 6, 8, 9 million. So now you could be looking at 20 plus million of a cap hit this year for Diggs. So I'm starting to think it won't happen, which is it's sad. It's sad to think about. Shout out Eddie Van Horn says, what's going on? Let me check on IG to see if I missed any comments. Malachi said, whoever asked that question about tight ends knew what they was doing. Facts. Yeah, Nick Caley, I think he enjoyed that question as well. I enjoyed the answer he gave us. So let me get a couple more comments, and then we'll get another clip going. Unknown says, do you think we'll get T. Higgins? I do not. Number one, he is going to be the most coveted free agent if he is not franchise tagged by the Bengals. So he'll cost a bunch of money, and we have no money. And number two, he is an ex-receiver like Nico, which is, in my opinion, the most limited as far as skill sets, as far as versatility, and they're most impactful in a certain position, which is backside one-on-ones against press coverage, field stretching. So it's kind of hard to justify spending a bunch of money on two ex-receivers that are more straight line when you need to have a variation of skill sets. So between money and scheme fit, I say no. Retreat to Hell says, nah, we are going to get priced out. Facts. Yeah. And then Unknown says, I think Will Anderson will have a defensive player of the year season this upcoming year. Man, I could see that for sure. I was hoping we would see it this year. And, if not for injury, he might have been, somewhat close to that. So I could definitely see that. But yeah, let me get to another clip on here. Yeah, if y'all got any questions, just feel free to let me know. IG, TikTok, YouTube, X, whatever it is. Let's see. Got some more Nick Caley right here.
The ball. He's an accurate thrower of the football. He's a natural thrower of the football. He's instinctive. He's got the it factor, and he's a warrior in terms of his competitiveness. And I've admired him dating back to his college days. So I'm really excited to have an opportunity to work. He can spin it. He throws the ball.
This is him talking about.
He's an accurate thrower of the football. He's a natural thrower of the football. He's instinctive. He's got the it factor.
I'm excited to see how he can, elevate his game. We saw what CJ was like his first year, but you look at what Matthew Stafford does with the Rams. I mean, could we have an MVP season from Stroud? I may be getting ahead of my skis, but I'm excited, man. I mean, Stroud has all the tools. To me, it was crazy that he was ever even questioned during this year. I understand there were struggles and the O-line was terrible. We had injuries to receivers, but the fact that people, even considered that CJ Stroud may or may not be the guy, to me was crazy. I mean, from what we saw the first year and even this year, just from a skill set standpoint alone, he's always been the guy. I mean, anybody who's been under that much pressure knows for a fact that it's not as easy to still be a great quarterback. I mean, obviously you look at Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, who experienced just a fraction of what CJ Stroud did, and he had one of the worst performances of a quarterback almost all time. So yeah, with that being said, the pass pro getting fixed, being adaptable in the scheme, having different answers for CJ, working the offense around his strengths. I mean, I'm super excited, dude. Let's see. We got a comment here. Mario Master, do you have a favorite day 2 receiver? There's a lot of good ones. I can pull up a list. I mean, it's tough. It depends on who we sign in free agency, the type of receiver, to where then now when the draft comes, we'll draft a different type. So right now we need a slot and we need a Z. A slot is what Diggs played, so we need a slot receiver like that. And we also need a Z to play like Tank Dell on the outside, the other outside spot that can kind of be, slot and outside. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely good day 2 guys. Jack Beck, both the Iowa State receivers. I like Kyle Williams out of Washington State. There's a handful of guys that I like, and I feel like the receiver position is always stacked in the draft. Unknown says, how long today draft 2 through 4? Okay, rounds 2 through 3. Yeah. And then Brandon Hallman says, need an OPY Nico year. Yeah, that's the other thing too is Nick Caley. I don't think he's been around an offense that has had an alpha X receiver like Nico Collins. And to be fair, a lot of coordinators haven't. I mean, he's a freaking unicorn. So Nico Collins could be unlocked to a whole new level. We could start using him in different ways, play designs, route trees, running the ball, etc. So that'll be exciting as well. Unknown says, Brandon, for sure, I think he could have gotten it if he never got injured. Yeah, Nico Collins was on a crazy pace last year. And then Brandon says, Jalen Royals, Jack Beck. Yeah, Jalen Royals is a good one too. I think Utah State. Brandon Hallman says, hard to beat out Saquon or Jamar Chase for it last year, though. Yeah, that was a crazy year by both. Yeah, and then here's the clip on Nick Caley and tight ends.
And catching passes.
Yeah, I love tight ends. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased there, but I think we got a great group of guys, smart, tough, competitive, and in my history, we've used a bunch of different guys in different roles, and I like tight ends.
I like tight ends. Over on TikTok, $sign says excited AF. Me too. And then he says, what is the plan with Mechie? That's a great question, man. I was thinking about that earlier today. I mean, potentially he's a guy that Nick Caley can get more out of, with the different scheme. But depending on who we sign, I don't think he's starting caliber for us. I don't know if he's a trade candidate or what, but I mean, man, because I was thinking too, Robert Woods is a free agent, but there probably is some value in re-signing Robert Woods from him having known the Rams offense under McVay. And so if we run similar concepts, it would be beneficial to have a veteran receiver there to help other receivers know the offense. And then if he needs to give you snaps, you can trust him to execute the correct way. So, if we were to go sign or draft a new starting slot, and then you keep Woods, and then now you get Mechie, now you're kind of just have too many slot receivers. So Mechie is a tough one, man. I don't know. Like, I wish he would just pan out the way we hope, but I don't know if it'll happen. Let's see what else we got. Retreat to Hell says, with the hiring of Frank Oakham, Darius Alexander, chances of getting drafted to us jumped. Yeah, so Frank Oakham is the new defensive line coach. He was the coach at Toledo last year, and Darius Alexander is a highly touted interior defensive lineman coming out in the draft from Toledo. So, yes, I agree. That would be cool. Unknown says, I like Jack Beck a lot. Looks like a Cooper Kupp type of guy with a physical receiver. Yeah, so Jack Beck is a guy that normally I personally wouldn't like that type of skill set. He seems like he's not a burner, not crazy separation, but he's just a physical possession guy who can make tough catches. He can go up and get the ball. And he's not quite the X receiver, but he's kind of like, I don't know what he is. But regardless, like that normally wouldn't, make something I would want. But with Nick Caley's offense that I've kind of watched from the Rams, you look at Puka Nacua is really his comp. He could play that role where he's that tough receiver who can do a lot of versatile stuff for you and block in the run game as well. So normally I wouldn't like him, but in this scheme, I like him. And really, I guess I like anybody who's good with the hopes that Nick Caley can figure out how to best use him. I still had that stickler mindset where I try and, get the different types of skill sets at receiver. You got your X, Nico, and then you need your Z and your slot. That I could be overanalyzing, but Nick Caley alluded to it today. He talked about getting guys with different skill sets, so you want a variation to help you, open up your offense. The more diversity you have, the more ways you can attack a defense. The more you get more of the same, then you're limited to only doing this and that. So that's kind of the mindset on that. And Brandon basically said what I said about Jack Beck. And he said they're all 6'2", 210. And then Retreat to Hell says Trey Harris seems like a fit. Yeah, so Trey Harris is tough. So, same thing. Normally I wouldn't like it. I feel like he is more of that true X receiver. And so with that being said, maybe he may not be as much of a fit as a Jack Beck. I may be wrong, but I'm not saying that he's not great. He's a stud for sure. But yeah, I feel like there was a couple more clips. Those were just the ones that I had clipped, but let's let it roll for a minute. Let's see. Let's just pick a random spot, let it roll. We can watch an ad together if y'all want. I guess it's not showing y'all the ad. Skip it. That was the O-line. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen. That's why. I need to share YouTube. What an idiot. Share this tab instead.
Is there any coach who's influenced your views of the offensive line?
Sure.
The experience that you have with that?
Yeah, Dante Scarnecchia. I was with Dave DeGuglielmo in 2015. Very good coach. Dante Scarnecchia, longtime New England coach, influenced a lot of what I've obviously learned up front in the protection systems, and then been a part of other ways of doing it too. But yeah, in terms of my the formative stages, it would be my early years in New England, obviously, with those two.
Warren with the Houston Chronicle here.
Hi, Sam.
D'Amico's spoken about your ability to coach in different schemes, pulling from different areas. Just kind of in your first time calling plays, do you have an idea of where scheme-wise you're really going to be drawing on for building this offense and kind of where you're pulling from?
Sure. I think, you have things, you have foundations and pieces that you want to, hang your hat on, obviously. I think, again, it's all about the players. There's different years. Every year is different, so we're going to do it around the strengths of our players. But I want to obviously first start off establishing the run game. What is that going to look like? Well, it's going to be based on, again, what we do best, and we'll pave the way with that moving forward. Yeah.
I love all of his answers.
How's it going to be, guys?
We will adapt.
Just with the decision to retain Cole and promote him to offensive line coach. Just kind of what went into that decision, and what's your confidence level on him, being a part of last year's staff, kind of fixing some of those issues that were going on?
Getting Cole as our offensive line coach to lead that room, just having one voice to lead it, feel really strong about that. Cole helped a lot of our young players when it came to developing. He had a really great relationship.
And so he said having one voice to lead it. And so I'll post a clip later. But last night on my live with Jonathan Alexander, he mentioned something that I thought was very interesting when talking about the O-line position group and the coaches. He said that from his understanding, it was Chris Strausser was like the overseer, and then Cole Popovich was in charge of the run game. And then I forget the other gentleman's name was in charge of the pass game. So you had two guys, run, pass, and then overseer. And he said he heard they asked why Strausser wouldn't step in. So that was kind of interesting to hear that you have an O-line coach now delegating stuff, and now there's not one voice. And that's basically what D'Amico said here. So let's rewind it just a second and listen to that. That was very interesting to hear.
What's your confidence level on him, being a part of last year's staff, kind of fixing some of those issues that were going on?
Getting Cole as our offensive line coach to lead that room, just having one voice to lead it, feel really strong about that. Cole helped a lot of our young players when it came to developing. He had a really great relationship with a lot of guys, and I think very highly of Cole and what he's able to do. And I think him having a prior relationship with Nick as well, and them being able to work together and them to hit the ground running instantly, I think that also led to my decision, and I know we'll be better for it.
That's a good point. So basically, the prior relationship.
The locker room. I got one for D'Amico and one for Nick. D'Amico, what was it like?
Wait, so
this is the second time for someone to kind of oversee the offensive side of the ball. What was it like this time as compared to the first time when you hadn't been a head coach yet?
That's a great.
This time, this process, it was a little easier. I think knowing what.
Let me get a couple comments. I see you guys talking about. Let's see. And over on IG, we got a couple comments. Dandon92 says, if Diggs walks, would you trade for Debo? I don't know if I would trade for Debo. That contract's pretty crazy. But, if you just put the contract aside, potentially, I see it hard to get done. And then he asked for highest draft priority as of now. As of now, it's probably wide receiver just because we have two holes to fill, but it'll probably be O-line or receiver for me. And then after that, interior defensive line. King Bless 32, yo, my brother, appreciate you, man. He says it sounds like Nick sounds like he knows what he wants to do. Facts, man. You walk away from that presser feeling good. He's the man with the plan. And then Unknown says, honestly, all this talk with Nick Caley and Rams with Cup style play kind of makes me think Nick Caley could possibly target Cooper Kupp in a trade, but likely not. Yeah, I would not be surprised, dude. There is value. I feel like you see this a lot when coordinators move, they bring someone over that they trust. Obviously he would know the system, and so you would get the production from him, proven player, but then you also get the value of him helping teach the scheme and process to everybody else. So, I feel like the Rams, and Jonathan talked about this last night, it's pretty similar to, happens quite a bit in the league. The Rams are stuck with this contract with Kupp and they don't want to deal with it. So they put the trade offer out there. No one's biting. So then now they say, okay, now we'll eat a certain portion of the cap, and there's still no bites. They're going to keep continuing to try and get something for Kupp before cutting him. They're going to try and get some draft picks. And that it may be that they either get very little capital and eat most of the cap, or they just cut their losses and cut them. And at that point, you can negotiate. He becomes a free agent, and you can negotiate your own contract with them. So I'm beginning to think that we won't get Diggs because I think he wants to test free agency. And I would not mind Cooper Kupp as a replacement. I know people are concerned about age and injuries, but I think they're kind of overblown, honestly. And I think a big part about Kupp is, yes, he's athletic and a great route runner, but I think something that is very valuable to him is his IQ. He is a very smart receiver, and I feel like if you're smart enough, and that coupled with the contested catch, tough catches as a slot receiver, that can buy you a lot of years in the NFL. You don't have to be this freak athlete. You can win with your brain and you can win with your guts. A lot of the slot receiver stuff is recognizing a blitzer, running a hot route, recognizing a defense, settling in a hole, working back to the quarterback. And a lot of it is you're in tight windows, making a tough catch. And it's stuff you can't really teach. It's like either you get it or you don't. So, and then Retreat to Hell talks about Cup being a target, but his contract being an issue, like we said. And then he says he might be available in free agency, like we just said, if they release him. And then Unknown says, honestly, I feel like Cup would just be another Diggs, injury-prone, high-paid contract and old. I mean, I don't know. I would have to dig into his history, but I don't know if he's injury-prone or not. I mean, I typically, when these players get hurt, lean to think that we overdo it, and a lot of it's just bad luck. Unless it's like soft tissue injuries, like reoccurring stuff like hamstrings and groins and quads, then that stuff is like, on the player, in my opinion. But when it's like you like getting hit and it's like structural, like a knee or a shoulder, like that's just kind of bad luck, or concussions, I guess. Unknown says, given his age and injury history, he won't be a high paid. Yeah, so I mean, that would be to our advantage. You could get a better deal. Unknown says, hey, Stressans, where do you find all these clips? Just wondering. So the video is on the Texans YouTube, and that's what I'm playing now. And then the clips, I just clipped off the Texans YouTube. So there's clips on my Twitter, on all my social media that I've done today. Brandon says, just have to keep in mind there's reasons the Rams are ditching Cup and the 49ers are ditching Debo. Yeah, the two biggest reasons are money, but yet, and it's money relative to their value. So it's basically is like a discrepancy. I mean, I think they don't mind them as players. They just feel like they're overpaying them, which if you can get them for cheaper, then it may be better for another team. I don't think it's because, I guess you could say Debo may be some character stuff, but I mean, it's not anything crazy. Okay, Brandon says Mike won't pick up audio when the video is playing over. That's good to know. Appreciate that. That's a good little tidbit there. Unknown says, I wouldn't mind that with Nick Caley it's possible to draft just because he's a former tight ends coach. I think we're talking about Gunnar Helm, which RK Shizzo says Helm is a big guy, reminds me of a Gronk build. Yeah, that's exciting to know. I mean, we need a tight end, a game-changing tight end, even though we have multiple tight ends on the roster. So that'll be exciting to see if Caley's a tight end guy and knows that the tight end is critical for success. If he can be in the ear of D'Amico and Nick and be like, hey, get rid of this guy, let me get this guy, that would be cool. But yeah, Brandon says, how do you think Caley's scheme may change the way Stroud makes his reads? I would say the biggest thing would be pre-snap. It seems like they get lined up sooner. We all saw or see how, we have these long, intricate play calls that take forever to get in, get to the line of scrimmage with 6 seconds left. I think we could use more tempo. I think that the more use of motion and motion at the snap, I think the use of motion, obviously you get indicators of whether they're in man or not if they follow the guy motioning. But you can also know pre-snap where you want to go with the ball based off of a motion. If you motion a certain guy with an intention of attacking a certain guy's leverage and you get them to shift a certain way and you see it, then you know, okay, this route is going to be open against this guy because he has the leverage. So from that perspective, from motion and leverage, from getting to the line of scrimmage quicker and allowing him to have time to read the defense, maybe use some hard counts, I believe those would be ways that the reads could be affected, improved for C.J. Stroud and a Nick Caley offense. But yeah, I think that's most of it. I'll just do a little bit more. It's been about 45 minutes. It's gone by quick. A little bit more of D'Amico here.
Knowing what I was looking for, knowing what to look for after being a head coach for 2 years now and seeing how we operate here. And it was an easier process for me. The first time around, becoming a head coach, it was very hectic, trying to get a new staff, trying to put everything together, a lot more hectic this time, just being able to take my time, not rush anything, but to think through it, get the right guy, talk to a lot of different people, right, to get a lot of input in what we were doing. So felt much more comfortable this time around.
And Vic, you said the scheme's going to be player-driven. A lot of talking points when you hire an offensive coordinator. Are they going to run the McVay scheme? Are they going to go back to the Patriots? How would someone like me describe the scheme?
Yeah, so again, that clip we kind of touched on, but, it seems like D'Amico has learned this time when he went to go hire a coordinator, he knew exactly what to and what not to look for based off of his experience or bad experience with Slowick. So he's learning. He's still in his third year. RK Shizzo definitely needs to let Stroud change plays and read the defense at the line, which from what I've heard, I suspect that will be the case. Santi on IG says trade for Garrett Wilson. I don't know, man. I mean, I would be surprised. Cap space, number one. Don't have a lot of cap space. Draft capital, number two. He's going to cost probably at least a second-round pick. And then, you get him for a year or two, and then his contract will become coming up, and he's going to probably want 30-plus APY per year around the same time that you got to pay Stroud, Will Anderson, Derek Stingley, et cetera. So that'll be tough. It would be nice, but it would be tough.
If we were talking about it.
It's going to be Houston's. It's going to be our scheme based on what we do. And I don't say that to throw any curveballs. It really is. I mean,
this was a great question by Landry and a great answer by Nick Caley. He asked him, you've been a part of these different schemes. Which one will you run?
But to think through it, get the right guy, talk to a lot of different people, right, to get a lot of input in what we were doing. So felt much more comfortable this time around.
And Dick, you said the scheme's going to be player-driven. A lot of talking points when you hire an offensive coordinator. Are they going to run the McVay scheme? Are they going to go back to the Patriots? How would someone like me describe the scheme if we were talking about it?
It's going to be Houston's. It's going to be our scheme based on what we do. And I don't say that to throw any curveballs. It really is. I mean, my history dating back to when I first got into the National Football League under Coach Belichick is we were going to be a game plan team. If that meant we were going to run duo and gap schemes and run the ball 45 times to win the game, then that's what we were going to do. If we had to run more perimeter plays, wide zone, and we felt that was going to give us the edge, we were going to do that. It was all going to be based, we were going to ask our guys to do what they do well, but it was going to be based on what we do to help us win. And at the end of the day, we want to win, and that's priority for us.
And follow.
That's awesome. So basically, our scheme is going to be Houston's. That's a great answer. So we're not – before it was like, what scheme do you run? Oh, we run the Shanahan scheme. We're going to run this same shit no matter what our personnel is, no matter who we play, no matter what the defense does. We're going to line up and run this same shit. But now it's like we're willing to do whatever. So, I mean, not only is it based off your own personnel, but the other part that I feel like I've been failing to talk about and now we can start to point out is it also varies week to week based off your opponent. So, I mean, one week, the weakness of our defense could be interior run defense, so we could do heavy gap scheme. The next week, it could be exterior run defense, and we could do heavy zone scheme. And it's all, based off of what we can do as well as what the opponent tries to, as well as what the opponent is not good at or what they try to do to you. So I love that answer. Again, we know it's all coach speak, but like, just seeing and hearing the way his brain works, I love it, man. I mean, this same kind of mindset and approach as far as like adaptability is something that D'Amico Ryans does on defense and being dynamic. And so now we're getting on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm very excited. I'll do just one more clip here and then we'll call it.
Follow up. And watching last year and taking in all that information and approaching the offseason, is there anything that you think or any area of improvement that you think this offense needs to make to achieve those goals?
Yeah, I would say this. I'm really only focused on moving forward, and each year is different. We're going to hit the time. We're going to get into free agency, draft, et cetera. We'll see how our team shapes up here in the next couple months, but we'll put our focus in that one day at a time as we put together our roster.
Joe Mixon in the backfield, you talk about running the football. Specific to Joe, what are some of the skill sets you see from Joe and kind of the mentality he has as you plan things out?
Yeah, I love his mentality. I love the way he runs. I love the way he finishes. He's a violent runner on contact. He's competitive. I've admired him for a long, long time. So I'm really excited. He's a really good player, and I'm really excited to work with him.
On the tight end position, it was a spot
that was awesome too. I guess a good point to end on is watching Nick Caley talk about Joe Mixon. And I guess, we talked about earlier, but like you can tell like he's passionate. That's one thing that D'Amico said is, whether he gets players or whether he gets coaches, he wants to get people who are passionate. And you can definitely tell with Nick Caley that he is a guy who's passionate about football despite watching him and listening to him talk. And he's passionate about Joe Mixon and CJ Stroud. But with Joe Mixon, you can't help but think too, I mean, how he's going to use Joe Mixon, how he'll be unlocked. I mean, we all know what Joe Mixon did this year. He was a top 10 running back with probably a bottom 10 run blocking O-line. I mean, basically all of his production was created by himself. So you can tell that he sees that and acknowledges that. And you look at, our most recent example is the Rams with Kyron Williams, who's a great running back, but I think Joe Mixon's better. I mean, if Kyron Williams is doing that in that offense, what's Joe Mixon going to do? And then when he was in New England, they had success too with Damian Harris. I mean, if guys like Damian Harris and Kyron Williams are producing like top 10 running backs and potential schemes like we might see, then what is Joe Mixon going to do? So that's got me very excited. Brandon says, under Slowick, the opposing defenses had us figured out by the second quarter. I don't think that will be such a problem this year. Yeah, it's a great point. So, as Nick Caley said, like we adjust and adapt game to game. It's going to also happen quarter to quarter and half to half, something we didn't see last year. They didn't believe in second half adjustments. I guarantee you, Nick Caley, if he comes out with the game plan and they come out and stop it, he'll change it at halftime. So that's a great point, Brandon. But that's all I got, fellas. I love that interview. Appreciate y'all tuning in and commenting and giving me y'all's input as well. Hopefully most of y'all feel good about it. I think, with Nick Caley, the offense improves mightily. I think the pass pro improves mightily. I think the run game, the pass game, I'm excited to see what kind of moves we make in free agency and then draft. And, I even said last year I said it all year that was a Super Bowl caliber defense. And really, honestly, all we needed was an average to slightly above average offense to be a legit contender. And we saw it in Kansas City. If offense just put up 20 points, like we have a legit chance to win the game. So with that being said, I think defense will be even better next year. Offense will be better. So that means I expect us to have a legit shot to, at the very least, make the AFC Championship game. So I'm very optimistic. Times are good and appreciate all of you guys, and we blessing.